All right, so the first thing we're going to review is finding out the x value where the minimum occurs, right? In this case, they're not asking you for the minimum. They're asking the minimum value occurs when x equals what? So all you have to do is remember what these things represent. These numbers in here represent in vertex form. So I'll remind you, right here, if you change the sign of this number, that would be h. So if you see -3 in there, that means h was 3. H is your axis of symmetry. And 7 is k. That will be your minimum value. So minimum is 7. Now, one of these pieces of information is the answer. The minimum value, 7, occurs when x equals what? 3. So the answer here would be 3. Grab the number in the parentheses, change the sign, and that's your answer. That would be your axis of symmetry, or your x value whenever the minimum occurs. So now use that same common sense for the next one. We're not looking for the number on the end because that would be the minimum. We're just looking at the number in the parentheses. What do you do to the number in the parentheses? You change the sign. So number 2 would be -6. Easy so far? All right, let me know if you have any questions. Stop me on the spot and ask if you're stuck or if you want a different explanation. All right, let's go to the next page. On the next page, the first question says find the axis of symmetry, which is h. Well, we just did on the other one, right? And here, find the vertex. To find the vertex, you have to find h and you have to find k. So whatever we do for this problem, we're going to start off doing the same thing for the next one. The only step that's extra would be plugging in what you get for x, what we did yesterday. So just a little refresher. Look at number 3. Now, before I start number 3, 5, 35, and 100 do have a common factor, but this is not a factoring question, so there's no need to factor. You only take out the greatest common factor when the question's asking you to factor. If it's just saying find the axis of symmetry or find the vertex, you're not factoring anything out. Clear? So let's set it up. To find the axis of symmetry, it's -b divided by 2a. What we did yesterday. So now let's plug in the values of b and a and figure out what the axis of symmetry is. Pay attention here, Matthew. So -b over 2 times a. b is 35 and a is -5. Now if I divide that, it gives me positive 3.5. Now axis of symmetry has to be an equation, so you just put x equals 3.5. That's what we did yesterday. -b over 2 times a. You should be used to it. The activity yesterday was good for this. Now, number 4, we're going to do the same thing. No taking out a factor because it doesn't say factor. So we're doing -b divided by 2 times a. b is -12, a is +2. If you simplify that, it equals +3. Two negatives next to each other turn to a positive. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Now you plug in the 3 wherever you see an x and simplify it. So that'd be 2 times 3 to the second power minus 12 times 3 minus 6. We just plugged in the 3 there and there. Now simplify it using PEMDAS. So 3 to the second power is 9. 9 times 2 is 18. Negative 12 times 3 is negative 36. Bring down your minus 6. If you put it all together, you get negative 24. So my vertex is 3 comma negative 24. Let's move on to the next page. All right, on the next page, we're going to practice converting from standard to vertex form, and then we're going to do from vertex to standard form. There should be a couple of questions on there just like this, so if you practice here, you can look back at this while you're taking the test and help you. So, number 5, to go from standard to vertex form, you need to find the vertex. How do you find the vertex? We just did it on the previous problem. Negative b divided by 2a. Put the 12 here and a 1 on the bottom. Now, if you simplify that, it gives you negative 6 as the h value. Now, you grab negative 6 and you plug it in wherever you see an x. So that would be negative 6 to the second power plus 12 times negative 6 plus 32. Now we simplify. Negative 6 to the second power is positive 36. 12 times negative 6 is negative 72. Bring down your plus 32. Now if you simplify that, it equals negative 4. So h is negative 6, k is negative 4. Together, they create the coordinates to the vertex. So now, once you have the coordinates to the vertex, you have to convert it to vertex form. So vertex form is a parentheses x minus h squared plus k. Your job is just to plug in h here, k there, and a, which would be the number on the outside. In both of these, the number on the outside is positive 1. So we're ready to write our answer. Parentheses with the 1 on the outside, you don't have to write the 1. Here we're going to put x minus h, which is negative 6. When two minuses are next to each other, it changes to plus. And now the only thing left to plug in is k. K is negative 4, so we put minus 4. Remember, I have an entire video on this, right? But this video right now is going to be short, and it's going to include everything. So before you watch the old videos that are longer, watch this one, which is a review video. It'll help quicker. All right, let's go to number 2. Yes, which is that same answer. So that was the answer that I just erased because I used the same equation. So now on number 2, I'm going to wait, Kathy, because I want you to pay attention to this one because this is the one that's harder than that one. That one we practice a lot. It's not hard, but it's tricky. So just pay it. I'm going to keep bringing down this 1 while I'm doing this. If that was a 3, a 4, a 10, you do the same thing. You bring it down to the end. You don't include it right now, okay? PEMDAS first, right? So exponent has to happen before anything else. So let me show you. First thing you do is expand x plus 6 to the second power. What do I mean by expand it? I mean, instead of writing it once with a square, write it twice. So x plus 6 times x plus 6. Then you bring down your minus 4 at the end and your number in the front. So far, so good. That's what expanding means. X plus 6 to the second power means x plus 6 times x plus 6. Now, this here is what you do next. You distribute and collect like terms. After that, you would multiply by the number on the outside, and then you bring your minus 4 in. In this case, the 1 is not going to change anything, so I'm going to keep bringing it down to show you you're supposed to, but it's not going to change any values. So here we have x times x, x to the second power. X times positive 6 is positive 6x. We distributed the x, now we got to distribute the 6. 6 times x, another positive 6x. 6 times 6, positive 36. Now put a parenthesis on your result here once you simplify. So x squared plus 12x plus 36. There's a 1 on the outside and a minus 4 over here. Now at this point is when you multiply all of these by the number out here. So 1 times all of this doesn't change it. So you just bring it down. And now you can include the minus 4. collect like terms, and we have our answer. X squared plus 12x plus 32, because this equals 32. Notice I use the same equation, so you can verify your answer. Let's move on to the next page. All right, on the next page, we get to the factoring section. Now, here you have to look for a greatest common factor because they're asking to factor. So, first of all, between 6, 1, and negative 15, the common factor is 1. When the common factor is 1, you can't factor anything out. So, we're already going to our factoring method for this. Line underneath the whole equation, and you break down the first and the last number. What times what is 6x squared? 3x times 2x. It could also be 6x times 1x, but try 3 and 2 first. Just like 15. 15 could be 15 times 1, but I'm going to try 5 and 3 first. Okay? So now, negative 15 is 5 times negative 3 or negative 5 times positive 3. You won't know until you test it out. So let's put negative 5 times 3, and let's see how this works out. Negative 5 times 2x, negative 10x. Yes? It could be the 3. I'll do it, just so you can see. I'll do it. What I was saying is, like, you won't know until you test it out. So, for example, let's say the negative was on the 3, right? 5 times 2x, positive 10x. 3 times negative 3, negative 9x. 10x minus 9x is positive 1x. Is that positive 1x? No. If you got the right number but the wrong sign, all you have to switch is the sign. Now you switch the positive here and the negative there. Now it's going to work out because it gives us negative 10x plus 9x, which is a negative 1x result. Once your middle number matches, your answers are right here in front of you. 3x minus 5 goes in one binomial. And the bottom part, 2x plus 3, goes in the other. So those are the factors. But this doesn't say factor only. It says factor and find the solutions. So after you factor, you use a zero product property to get the solutions, or the zeros, or the roots, which mean the same thing. So now let me show you. You make each one of these equal to 0, and you solve both separately. So what are the two steps to solving this equation? 3x minus 5 equals 0. First step is plus 5 on both sides. Leaves you with 3x equals 5. And now you divide by the coefficient, which is 3. So divide by 3, divide by 3. One answer is 5 over 3. Now, use that same logic to do the next one with no work. What would be the two steps to solving that equation? Minus 3 and divide by what? 2. So minus 3 divided by 2. That will be my answer if I solve it just like I did this one. Copy it down, and then I'll do number 2. So let's go to the next page. All right, on the next page, it's again a factoring question, but these are not trinomials. These end up being difference of squares. So these, if you remember, are the easier ones to do. Whenever the middle number disappears, that means you had the same thing on both sides, but one was plus, one was minus. Yes? Oh, we haven't done it? Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm sorry about that. Let's do it. Let's review number 8 first. I had skipped it. I'm sorry. You forgive me? Awesome. Let's do it. All right. So on number 8, 2, 6, and 36 have a common factor. They're all divisible by 2. But there's also something else they have in common. You can't just go with the number they have in common. If they have a variable in common, you have to factor that out as well. So this is a method that worked better for last period. I'm going to use this method. I'm going to show you now. You've seen me do it before. What times what is 2? 2 times 1, and you have 3 x's there because it says x to the third power. Now, what times what is negative 6? 2 times negative 3, and you have 2 x's there because it says x squared. Now, what times what is negative 36? 2 times negative 18, and there's 1x there. Notice, all of them start with a 2 because we determined that the greatest common factor was 2. Now, circle what they have in common. They all have a 2, and they all have 1x. Do they have anything else in common? No. So you open your parentheses. Whatever you circled goes outside of the parentheses because you factored it out. So we have 2x on the outside. Now, to figure out what's left inside, you can divide or just look at this process here. Whatever you didn't circle is still in there. So what did we not circle on the first term? Just the 2 x's. So x squared. What did we not circle on the second term? Negative 3x. And then what do we not circle on the last term? Minus 18. Now we're ready to factor what's in the parentheses. Line underneath, break down the first and the last number. What times what is x squared? X times x. What times what is negative 18? It could be 6 times 3, 9 times 2, or 18 times 1. I'm going to try 6 times 3, but one of them has to be negative. So I'm going to choose the negative right here. Now cross multiply. 6 times x is 6x. X times negative 3, negative 3x. If you put it together, it equals positive 3x. Is that positive 3x in the middle here? No, but it is a 3. If you got the right number but the wrong sign, all you have to switch is the sign. So instead of the negative being on the 3, you're going to put it on the 6. Now that'll equal negative 6x plus 3x, which matches your middle number at negative 3x. Now that it matches, your two solutions are x minus 6, the top part, and x plus 3, the bottom part. Now, if you use a zero product property on both of these, minus 6 is going to turn into positive 6, and plus 3 is going to turn to negative 3. Those are your two solutions, or zeros, or roots. Now, sometimes they might say, what is the positive solution? So, in that case, you just put the 6. Copy it down, and we'll move over to difference of squares. So, let's move on to difference of squares. We already kind of got that started. So, before I show you difference of squares, look at this example here. X plus 3, x minus 3. If you have the same thing on both sides, but the only difference is the sign, plus and minus, then watch what happens to the middle term when I distribute. X squared minus 3x plus 3x minus 9. Now what happens to the middle term? Negative 3x plus 3x is 0. So you're left with x squared minus 9. That is a difference of squares. That is a difference of squares. So that tells you if I'm going to factor a difference of squares, I know I'm going to have the same thing on both parentheses. The only difference is going to be one's going to be plus, the other one's going to be minus. So let's start on number 9 here. On number 9. What? From what? I haven't gotten to the pool problem. He did it? Let me see. The negative, yeah. Because the leading coefficient is negative, you have to factor a negative. It has to be the leading. So negative 6, this is t squared minus minus. T squared minus minus, you're good. This is minus. Very good, very good. Mike just did the poop problem. All right, you'll get there. So look at number 9. Put the two parentheses right below number 9. And watch how easy this is. What is the square root of 1x squared? 1x, 1x. Put 1 on each side. Now, what is the square root of 100? Remember, square root means what number times itself gives you 100? 10 times 10. So you put a 10 on each side. And now, both signs have to be different. So plus, minus. Doesn't matter if you put minus and then plus. It's the same thing. Now, if you make each one of these equal to 0 and solve it, so x plus 10 equals 0, x minus 10 equals 0. If you solve this, you get x equals negative 10. If you solve this one, you get x equals positive 10. We just factored and solved. That just means that u will touch the x-axis on those two spots. So let's say this problem is actually 8x squared minus 98. Right? So 8 and 98, do they have a common factor? The only way to find out is to do a t-chart, put both numbers, and break down the small one. What times what is 8? 8 times 1 and 4 times 2. You start with the biggest factor. Can 8 go into 98? No, it gives you a decimal. So 8 is not going to work. Can 4 go into 98? No, it gives you a decimal. So the only number that it can possibly be is 2. So you factor out the 2. Now divide to see what's left in your parentheses. 8x squared divided by 2, 4x squared. Negative 98 divided by 2, negative 49. Now what's in the parentheses is a difference of squares. So we're ready to set it up, but don't forget to bring down your 2 on the outside. Now square root of 4x squared is 2x, so you put 1 on each side. Square root of 49 is 7. Now just make sure the signs are different. So your two solutions don't include that 2. That 2 is a factor, but it doesn't become another solution unless it had an x on it. In this case, the only two solutions are going to come from the parentheses because there's an x in there. So negative 7 over 2 is the first one because the two steps are subtract 7, divide by the coefficient. On the next one, the two steps would be add 7, divide by the coefficient. So it's plus 7 divided by 2. So that's the same problem that was up there, but we just made it 8x squared minus 98 so we can factor out the 2. Hmm? It's kind of like simplifying, yes. Yes. That's a good comparison. All right, let's move on to the next page. Oh, I love this page. Please pay attention because this is very easy unless you don't see the teacher doing it. If you don't see me doing it, you might be confused. So I put 5 different questions here so we can analyze this graph and answer it. All right? Number 1 says, when the function is 4, what is the positive x value? So they're asking for an x value, which means 4 has to be a y value. So go to the y and go to that number. That's right there. Everybody agree? Now put a line all the way across so that it touches your u on both sides. It touches here and it touches there. Right? If we connect it to the x-axis, it'll give us both values when y is 4. So what's this value? Negative 3. What's this value? Positive 1. If they're asking for the positive value, which one are you going to put here? Positive 1. You with me? So that 1 relates to that 4. All right, let's do another one here. What is the axis of symmetry? Axis of symmetry is H. How do you find h? Negative b over 2a when you have an equation. But if you have a graph, a lot easier. Axis of symmetry divides that u in half. Let's cut it in half right now. Boom. What value is this on the x-axis? -1. So my axis of symmetry is x equals -1. Simple? Now let's skip number 4 and go to number 5 because it relates to this. That is the axis of symmetry. And this would be your minimum or maximum. In this case, it's a minimum. What value is that for the minimum? Huh? -1 was the x value for the minimum. What is the y value for the minimum? 0. Very good. 0. You with me? Vertex is here. So it relates to 0 and -1. Now, what is the 0 of the function? The 0 of the function. What's another name for 0? Another word for 0. We just talked about it. What's another name for 0? When I wrote it, you copied them all down, so I know you have them on your paper. Zeros. I'll give you a hint. Solutions, zeros, x-intercepts. All that means the same thing. Where does that touch the x-axis? Right here. Does it touch another spot? No. So it only touches -1. So what is a 0? -1. If that was a factor, it would have been x plus 1 in a parentheses, which will give you the -1. So that's how you see that all these things relate to each other. It's just different ways of doing it. If you get a graph, it's a lot easier. All you got to do is look. Questions? All right. Did I? Oh, y-intercept. What is the y-intercept? Where does it touch the y-axis? Right here. What value is that? +1. Now be careful with these little lines because see how it jumps from 0 to 2? That means 1 would be here. This would be the half mark. So don't get confused because some graphs have half marks. All right, let's go to the next page. This is choosing an equation that matches the graph. We did a whole IXL on this. We did a whole activity on this, right? Leading coefficient is negative, the U opens down. Leading coefficient is positive, the U opens up. This last number is your y-intercept. These are all pieces that you can use to figure out which one's the answer, okay? So, first off, look at the leading coefficient. Does that U go up or down? Up. That means the negative in the front cannot be the answer. So A and B off the bat are not choices because those would open down. Clear? Now, between these two, which one has the correct y-intercept? What is the y-intercept? +1. Which one has a +1? C. Done. So you don't even need to do work on these. You just look at those two numbers and you can figure out which one's the answer. And let's say by chance two of them had +1. Then you just do -b over 2a, and it'll tell you which one's exactly correct. You probably won't need to do this, but this is part of your arsenal. You can use it. Questions before I move on? Oh, I love this question. Okay. How long will it take for the bird poop to hit the water? I know you like the image. So let me explain to you what the steps are to figuring this out. If they're talking about when it hits the water, they want a solution, x-intercept, right? 4 ways of solving for the x-intercept. All the ways that you've learned are just factoring and zero product property. Later on, we'll learn the rest next week. But for now, let's use the one that we've learned, factoring. Now, if the leading coefficient is negative, you have to factor out a negative. So know that whatever I factor out is going to have a negative in the front. Now, between 6, 18, and 108, the greatest common factor is 6. Now, open your parentheses, divide to see what's left in the parentheses. So -6t squared divided by -6, t squared. 18t divided by -6, negative 3t. Positive 108 divided by negative 6, negative 18. Now, what's in the parentheses, we can factor using our cross product method. So, line underneath, break down the first and the last number. T times t is t squared. Now, what times what is negative 18? It could be 6 times 3, 9 times 2, 18 times 1. Let's try 6 and 3. 6 and 3. Now, one of them has to be negative because 3 times 6 is positive 18. It has to give you negative 18. So, if I have to put a negative on one of these numbers, which one should I put it on? And why? Where do I put the negative? On the 6 or the 3? And the question after is going to be why? The 6. Why? Because of this one? Because of the first number? Okay, that is the wrong place to look, but you got the correct answer, right? So let me remind you about the trick, Catherine. If the middle number is negative, that means the bigger number was negative. So instead of looking at the front, look at the middle. Now, if I cross multiply, it gives me negative 6t plus 3t, which equals negative 3t. Is that the correct middle number? Yes, it is. So now my two factors are t minus 6 and t plus 3. Now, if I use a zero product property on t minus 6, what is my solution going to be? I'll do it the long way. Positive 6 and negative 3. Change the sign. Change the sign and divide by the coefficient, but there's a 1, so you could do just change the sign. So the bird poops. In 6 seconds, that poop will touch the water. Any questions so far? All right, review over. You can start your test. These are the instructions on getting into the test if you forgot. You have till the end of the period to complete it now, but you can also work on it at nighttime. So as long as you're not working on it tomorrow, I will give you full credit. You have to finish it by the end of the night. So go ahead and get started. Log into your student portal, click Apps and Services, go to Performance Matters, and this test is going to pop up. The only test that's available there is this one. Click it, start it, and you have your notes. You can watch the videos.